Welcome to Game Film, where we dive deep into the minds of advisors and industry leaders. In each episode, we uncover the stories behind their victories and achievements, offering you invaluable insights and lessons to help you grow and succeed. So, sit back, relax, and let's roll the film.
Hello guys, today on Game Film we have Katie Braden, the founder of Advisor Video Marketing, and we're going to learn a lot more about video, how to use video in our practice, and how to use it in our firm. Katie, please tell us more about how you got here today and tell us more about what you're involved in, because I know there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, what I'm doing now, I've had a long path. I've been in the profession for 18 years. I actually got a degree in photography in Australia. So after a winding path that we might get into, I decided to kind of really get back to the creative side of my brain and leverage my passion for the profession. So I spend all of my time working with fabulous financial advisors and financial planners, helping them easily and authentically leverage video throughout their business.
I love it. And one other thing that I always want to mention is that you do have your CFP. And so I always tell people, I think anyone in our industry that's listening to this knows that that is a beast of a test and an exam to take, and it's impressive. And so I noticed one thing too, like you've had some involvement with the CFP board. What is your involvement on that front?
Yeah, so I have been part of the Women's Initiative Council since it officially launched as a council in 2014. So we are 10 years now, or I guess we'd be like in year 11. So pretty incredible, really trying to continue to increase the number of women CFPs.
And I think that's so big. I know that's something that Shannon, our CEO, is a big advocate of. And also I noticed it when I was doing research, like when you get the demographics and things like that, that there's so much opportunity out there for female advisors that I think even exposing them to the industry. So I love seeing that. I definitely excited that we have that and are gradually, I know it takes time, but growing that profession. So the first question I always like to kick off with, what would be your come out or your walkout song? If you were playing a sport or doing something that, say you were speaking and they put a song on, what would that song be requested from you?
Oh man, I have a very eclectic taste. Like I'm all over the map. So I think I would answer this differently depending on different times. But like, I'm feeling pretty cool right now, Jordan. So I gotta say, right now I might go with Jonas Brothers Cool, which is funny because I honestly could not name another Jonas Brothers song ever. But that one is like sticking in my head right now. It's just like, it starts out, I'm feeling so cool. And I was like, now that I'm here with you, feeling pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know that song, but now, I'm literally over here gonna make a note to look that song up because I'm always curious about what the song, because I feel like it tells either the current mood that you're in or like what you're trying to change that mood, or in the same facet I've had guests where they literally put the song on while we were in here and it totally changed the experience of it, but I love to hear it. And so now we'll have to add that to the list in the show notes, but also in my list so that I'll have to check it out later. But part of the Game Film, as we're moving in, I always like to, I think you have a lot of opportunity here, but I always start with us reflecting on certain decisions or different events in our life. And so what would be, one scenario that was like a big win or a big situation in your career?
I think, so we mentioned I went to school in Australia, and you even asked me before why. And one thing to know about me, I have always been a contrarian. It just somehow I'm genetically a contrarian. If I see everybody going one direction, I tend to turn around and go gently in the other direction. And so I started out in the profession in my mother's RIA, and I was her succession plan. And so I was being handed a very successful business. And Jordan, I joined her RIA in 2006, and it was virtual then. So great for lifestyle and travel, because that's my favorite thing. And I was there, and that's when I got my CFP certification, went through that process, learned more about the difference in really that firm only did investment management versus the value that full financial planning does. And this was in, early 2010s. And I couldn't really find a firm that did what I wanted to do. And I kept trying to do it within her firm, and it wasn't happening. And so I will never forget that moment. I was on northbound 8th in Bellevue, Washington. I was at that stoplight getting onto the freeway, and it dawned on me, I was like, I need to create the financial planning firm that I would want to work with. And that's what started me on the path. So I launched one of the first completely virtual monthly subscription financial planning firms in 2013. No product sales, no AUM, just flat fee modular planning. And that has been, one of the coolest decisions I've made. That's led to a lot of everything beyond that.
And I think that you were definitely ahead of your time in that, because I think, and actually the way we met was through one of the organizations now that's like their pitch, is they help people do what you were doing, and that's where you were already ahead of that curve on it. And so I think that's really interesting and really cool, that because you think about that moment, that now the industry, it's like, people using products like Advice Pay and things like that for flat fee, or just that structured of ongoing planning instead of just the typical AUM based that's not virtual, that you're going to have to meet everyone in person. So it's a totally different dynamic with the client. But one question before, because I want to go down that path more, how did your clients react whenever you were like, hey, I want to do all this virtual? Because nowadays we all experienced the last few years where everyone had to go virtual for like a good year. But how did they take it when you were like, hey, why don't we just have this as a call, or the different format of it?
It was really, really fascinating. And I was actually just having this conversation with an advisor recently who's going to be traveling soon. And so we were talking about his video setup and when he's virtual, and he's like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I'm traveling. Like, I love traveling and being different places, which is why I wanted a virtual practice. I didn't want to have to be tied anywhere. And so I would share that with clients because that was my life. And it was the most fascinating thing. I was working with, some very successful people, high net worth people in all sorts of professions. And remember, this is 2013.
Right.
And they started saying, they were like, oh my gosh, if you, meaning me, right? They're like, if you can take a very, traditional industry like financial planning and turn that virtual. I had one woman that was a counselor. She was like, well, maybe I can do this virtually. I had another guy that was looking to retire, and he's like, oh, well, maybe I could actually just shift and I could work more virtually. So it wasn't anything I set out to do, but it turned out that I was actually setting the example to my clients of what is possible in their work and life.
That's fascinating and such a great insight that, there's so many great businesses and so many things that now have expanded in that path. And so many things, like there's so many good ideas, but actually people that act on it and do it. And so like, you said one was a counselor, like now there's like Better Up, and there's all these different, counseling and different programs that are made for that, because it actually might be easier for some people to talk about things like that when it isn't in person, or the convenience of being able to do it virtually in those moments, or when, a crisis or anything like that. So there's always the behavioral twist. I have to, I see the world. And so that's fascinating, because I didn't even think about it that way, that so many people probably, did you see some clients change their career? Like, not necessarily change the whole industry, but did you see them start to change the format of their business with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, harder for a lot of businesses then, but they were really starting to implement, and they would do, hey, can I work virtually one day a week? And can I, work from vacation? If they were going somewhere, for 3 weeks to Europe, and they were like, look, I can still work from there. When I lived in Australia, that was 20 years ago. I was doing video meetings with my mom back in Seattle when I lived in Australia, right? Over 20 years ago. This feels like new technology to a lot of people, but it has actually been around for a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the burdens of our industry is, the compliance. A lot of people let the compliance kind of carry where it is, but a lot of times I think, we actually have an amazing chief compliance officer here that's very helpful from us on the technology side of letting us push the industry forward of what we're using. AI is everywhere, and of course now I'm dropping AI into our conversation, which that's everything on LinkedIn, every earnings calls in the investment world, it's everywhere. But there's no regulation out for certain AI products because some of them are so new. But being able to push that forward, that as long as you're doing the right thing and you're actually documenting the right way, that it's going to be fine. But I find it awesome that it was able to push it forward, because it definitely probably changed the way things are. And you saying that now leads me to the question too of, you're definitely an industry leader in the direction and path of things. Video has definitely not been something brand new. I think we all know that video has existed. It might have been a little handheld camera or, whatever, and now it's just our phones. But Tell me more about how you transitioned that from being, you're a CFP, you've got a great practice, things seem to be going really well because you probably were riding the up of everyone saying, oh my gosh, this is a better way to do business. What made you turn and start Advisor Video Marketing?
Yeah, so a little bit of a winding path there. So one of the challenges is that because I really was one of the first businesses of its kind, I started it to work with, those in their sort of 30s and 40s. And Sophia Berra did far better than I did with Gen Y planning and really sticking to that. But I think just sort of the network I was in, I had so many people coming to me. And because I didn't have anywhere to refer them to, I had to take on a lot of clients that really weren't the right fit for me. And so that kind of became exhausting, right? And I had to know everything about every different financial planning situation. And while I'm good at the technical side, that isn't what fuels me. But because I had this virtual business, I really started speaking out in the media at industry conferences. And then I started speaking internationally about how much we need to innovate, right? Because I was like, oh my gosh, I thought this was only going to be, for people in their 20s to 40s. The average age of my clients the first year was 57. And so I was like, okay, this is a bigger thing, right? I felt like I unlocked something. And so I did start speaking out. And I was like, everybody needs to come up with these different models, leverage technology. And then I just had so much fun doing that. I was like, I actually really liked working with advisors. And I felt like I got to leverage more of that creative side of my brain. But my first international trip was to South Africa. I did a national road trip speaking about my business, and I was leveraging video in 2013. I had a YouTube channel in 2013. I had video on my website and video in my emails. And so this hasn't been a new thing for me, but just seeing, and full well, advisors are not the fastest moving people, not the most innovative industry. And I know compliance can sometimes be one of those challenges, but I actually ended up working with the global organization that oversees CFP certification everywhere outside the US. And so that got me back to traveling, right? I was like, I want to travel. And so they actually created this incredible role. I was working in 35 countries, traveling all over the world, absolutely loved it. But again, I was kind of missing that creative side. And so that's where, I think so many people, we have these situations in life where it's like, hey, this is kind of working and it sounds great, right? Everybody was like, oh, that job sounds amazing. And it was, there were so many things, but it wasn't at the end of the day, really, really, truly feeding my soul. And my husband and I have always approached life and our decisions with why not, right? Usually when people make decisions, you say, I'm going to move, I'm going to change jobs. Everybody says, why? We approach things, we're like, well, why not? And so I left that role. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I just started reflecting on my career, on the industry, on what was needed. And then COVID hit. So my timing, in all honesty, was brilliant. And then I saw nobody knew how to go virtual and do all this stuff. And so I just kind of I don't even do mind maps. It's the only time in my life I've done a mind map. And I sat down and I looked at, I know operations, I know, client journey, I know every piece of a business. And then I just wrote video in the center of it. And I was like, really, video can and should touch every part of a financial planning business. And that's what launched Advisor Video Marketing.
That is a great story, and I love it because there was 20 things I wanted, but you were going, and so I wanted to hear all of it. And the one thing I'll pull a string on is you mentioned that video ties to each part of the advisor's business. And immediately when you said that, it made me think about how powerful tone, seeing someone, all the things you get from being engaged with somebody in person, you can get a good and strong feeling of that just from a video. And it made me think how important that, sometimes we think of video marketing, you think of it just in a one marketing context. So you see it as this is just for getting new clients or getting prospects in the funnel, whatever it is. But my mind, when you said that how it fits into everything, I think about Loom videos or whatever product, BombBomb, Loom, Stream, whatever you're using, how powerful those are for clients, or even I work with advisors, you work with advisors, how powerful those are. Have you seen that as a big growing piece of your business with your clients?
Yeah, it's huge. And that's what's also so fun to me is, I joke that I work with advisors the same way that I worked with my clients, like doing modular stuff, right? And there isn't a one size fits all. And so some advisors, they're like, hey, I actually am not even taking on new clients, but I want to use video, to better train my team and to proactively communicate with the clients that I do have. Maybe they're transitioning into more of a lifestyle practice. Video is brilliant. You can send 1 2-minute video that gives your clients way more confidence and puts their emotions at ease, during times of volatility and whatnot, than doing 65 phone calls. Knowing that you're really proactively reaching out. Companies that are growing, it's like, how can we train the team? How can we better communicate internally? I've had firms that have really struggled with like, hey, we have this investment team and we report out to the rest of the team quarterly, but they're just not really getting it. They just recorded a quick, super casual, nothing rehearsed video for the team immediately after the end of their quarterly investment team, sent it out to the rest of the team, and they were like, oh, I get what we're doing. I get why we're doing it. I feel like I'm, involved in the process. So, all of the behavioral psychology, everything around video and how that really taps into that human side and seeing the emotions, seeing the facial expressions, all those nonverbal things that are so, so important in communication. Video is hands down the best.
I agree so much because I'm also a big advocate. I say this with the teams I manage, and then like also with advisors. The power of almost like a phone call. That if anything, like because we're so used to emails and Teams, Slack, whatever it is, but it's almost like the video, like the way that now we have the formats of it. It's almost like a phone call on steroids in some ways, where with a phone call, anytime that you've ever called somebody, it's so much better at solving a problem or getting the situation correct or explaining something. But now you've upped it a little bit more if you're going to have a phone call with them or a video call like FaceTime, or you're sending out a video explaining something. And one of those impacts happened to me was I work with all of our technology vendors and all of our RFG. And I was working with this new vendor and their law firm. The person sent me a video of why he made his edits on, like, redlined certain items on our contract. And I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Obviously, it might not be as many billable hours for that attorney because he actually just saved so much time by explaining it. But he did a 3-minute video. And I was like, oh, okay, now we don't have this weird back and forth of like, well, why did you change that? Why did we redline this? And so it was all those things, and video, like right there, made a huge impact to me on that. And I think that that's a growing thing. So staying on the video piece, what are some other areas, because now my mind's going all over the place of like how you drew that mind map, and I'm also a big fan of mind maps because I never made one for myself, which I probably should after you've had some insightful times, but doing them with like clients and then also like road mapping and technology, we've used them. But what are some of the other areas that you've seen like your clients and just the, like growing outside of, the stereotypical like videos, or, just the different directions that you can use it?
Yeah, I think hands down, like the most effective is those one-to-one videos, or at least the videos that feel one-to-one. So think about everything throughout the client journey. So think about as soon as somebody, books a meeting, let's say you have like a Calendly on your website, right. They book a meeting. Look, that's terrifying for a lot of people. Maybe they've worked with an advisor and had a bad experience. They've never worked with an advisor. When I had my financial planning business, it was crazy. Like the majority of times people would book a call between 11:30 and midnight. Right? Not for that time, but that's when they were online. I'd, wake up in the morning. That tells me, right, they're up late at night. They're worried about things. And so the impact of sending a 30 or 45 second video, just saying, hey, Jordan, I see we're scheduled to talk next Tuesday. Really looking forward to it. There's going to be a casual meeting. You don't need to bring anything. You know what I mean? Like that does so much to just set a person at ease and introduce them so that they're not overthinking things and worried. And again, they're going to have different experiences. So that sets you apart. Maybe if you haven't done that, sending it right after that initial meeting and say, hey, Jordan, really enjoyed meeting you. I think we're a really great fit. We would love to work with you. Here are the next steps, reiterating that. I have so many stories of advisors that have won business just from doing one of those 2 videos. because they completely stood out from everyone else. And again, built that. And what's that quote? People don't care how much you know until, or show people how much you care. Don't tell them what it's going to come to me. But you know what I mean? It's showing them through something that just doesn't need to be complicated. And that's so much more impactful than having all those same words in text. No,
it's so true. And it makes me think like with that differentiated themselves. So like a lot of times advisors, there's tons of advisors out there. And I think there's tons of business out there to be had. Like we don't have to be combative or so, dwelling on the competition piece. Like there's plenty of business to go around for everyone. But one of the things is advisors are always looking for an edge of differentiation. So like how can they be different than the person around the block or the other person in the industry? And I think that that's huge that they actually won business from sending a personalized video like that, because it put them at ease, it, made them feel comfortable, but it also set them up completely different where, I could have written the most beautiful follow-up email in the world or, had my AI note taker create the summary and I kind of, zhuzhed it up a little bit. But that video of, hearing their voice, feeling some sincerity of them saying it or empathy that like, I loved hearing about your kids or I loved hearing about, where you two are traveling to. Like, I can't wait to hear about it when you get back. That makes people feel really nice. Like at the end of the day, I don't think it's complex psychology that we all love to be heard. And so being able to have somebody to do that, it's pretty powerful. It makes me think too, are you seeing even with like onboarding? Because that's like, you've got experience with the operations side of businesses, but like, that's all, I think we both know that's like one of the meatiest, like stressful, could be a good experience moments for somebody, but like when you're onboarding a new client, so much could happen, so many things. Are you seeing them actually use that, like use video to help them through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, so like those first two have to be actual one-to-one, right? And we know the psychology behind hearing your own name. So you notice when I did the examples, I was like, hey, Jordan, right? Like making that eye contact, saying your name, that really builds that connection. And then once you get further down that client journey, it's always, hey, let's look at what are those biggest pain points. Data gathering. Always a big pain point, right? If you're doing that comprehensive financial planning, that is painful. And so that's where you can have a one-to-many video, right? Where it feels like you're speaking directly to someone, but you can have one video that kind of automatically goes out to clients. And that is where that empathy comes in. And saying something like, we understand that this can feel painful, take the next 3 days to gather as many documents as you can. If you don't get everything, that's okay. We'll go through it all in our discovery meeting, but just acknowledge that pain to clients, because that's where so many people do kind of like stop and advisors keep following up and following up. So look at all of those bottlenecks within your process and think, okay, if I can have a video here that again connects on that human level, acknowledges a little bit of that pain, shows some empathy, that can really help people go, okay, I get it. Like, you understand this is painful. I can move on.
No, I love that. And I feel like even, pairing it with screenshots, sending a video to walk them through, and even like having those short little brief moments, it's so much easier for, from the tech side of it in my world that I live in so much. I'll be honest with you, we create knowledge base articles. Every company in the world has a laundry list of knowledge base articles, but the ones that add like a 2-minute video that's like, hey, here's how you do it, and they kind of click through, that is so much more powerful than me having to read through this 3 pages of like figuring it out, and I'm like, all right, like going through. If someone would just speak it to me like real quick, that would be beautiful. Like it's, so
and showing you, because it's video messages. I'm just looking at some of the data that I've, pulled right before this. They say like 95% of a message is retained when watched by video versus, 10% when reading text. Humans are so visual. And then, text for a lot of people. I've joked for years, if email stopped existing today, I would be thrilled. Like there is something still about email that I just like, I don't know, I seize up and I'm like, I just don't want to do email, but I can do video. all day long, right? So many of us have that negative perception of email, even if we don't totally realize it, right? Because it's stuff from our, clients hounding us, our boss hounding us, more work. So like 90% of information is, transmitted to the brain visually. Again, think back to nonverbal cues and how important that is in conversation. So that's where having those little helpful videos can just make such a big difference.
I agree, and I think the tone and some people were, I don't know the exact phrase, but I know that it's like there's tons of like nicknames for people that write these like super harsh emails or will comment on things with their frustration, but then you pick up the phone
Trolls?
there's like it's something like email warriors or something. Trolls is one of them, like. Those are the one probably more on like Instagram or TikTok or something that they're like just trolling through and dropping horrible comments. But there's these like email warriors. Well, they'll write you like an email and you're like, if you just gave me a call or I could send you a quick video to like show you how to do it. Like some of those things would be so different of an experience when you have the tone and the dynamic of working with like hearing and seeing someone.
Well, you do. And one thing I want to make sure to add in there is one of the resistance points that I have with advisors is, a lot of firms are like, oh, yes, but we're very high touch. Say, oh, we don't want to do that. We would rather schedule a call and walk a client through something. And my counterpoint to that is you're usually working with successful, busy people. Like that isn't an added benefit. They might not be able to get to this until 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, or they're going to want to do it at 8 a.m. on Sunday over their coffee. Like it's not adding value by making people schedule calls. And so that's one of those really big mindset shifts that I've seen starting to happen more and more with advisors is understanding what that high touch, high value really means, and that doing these videos is actually beneficial to clients. It's not detracting, it's adding.
It's actually an amazing point because you as an advisor, you're trying to grow your practice, you're trying to keep it high touch, you're trying to get that white glove feeling. But is it really, it's like redefining something. Like, well, how do you define that? Because it might be completely different between us two when we're saying the same phrase. White glove might mean something totally different to somebody else. You could be thinking about Michael Jackson's white glove. Like, I don't know. But it's a totally different thought, and it's very scalable too, where you have that ability to scale that relationship, and it's not going to make them feel any less important, like they're a number in your book of business or anything like that, but it's actually going to make a scalable solution, but it's going to give them the capacity and time to do it, because it might give them angst or anxiety that, hey, I got to do this between 8 to 5 because that's when Jordan is working and he needs to help me walk through this, where now it feels custom to them, it feels personalized to them, it's scalable for you and your practice, but now at the same time they could do it, like you said. I have 2 little kids. I'll be honest with you, after work, I do nothing but take care of them and get them ready for bed and feed them and all that. If I'm going to do anything that's required for my accountant or my advisor, it's going to probably happen at 9 p.m. because that's when I get a break. And I'll be honest, I don't think anyone wants a phone call from me at that time. Be like, hey, how do I log into this? Or how do I do this? Or, I don't understand this piece. Can you give me a call at 10 p.m.? Because you probably don't want to. So I'm in full agreement. I think that that's an amazing way to do it. Speaking through all of the video, one thing that I always think about, and you said like getting advisors to reframe how they're doing it in that experience. What are you seeing? Because I see tons of people posting, we all post like, I wouldn't say generic, but like the very business stuff in LinkedIn or on Instagram or wherever. But when you post those personal things, or they get to see a video of you walking on the beach or walking post-run and you're sweaty, any of those things, how are you getting advisors to do that? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm terrified to do those kinds of things. Like Jordan just ran only 2 miles and he looks like he's about to have a heart attack out there. But this might be a perfect time to do a video and explain something. Like, how are you getting advisors to feel comfortable to do that? Because I think now, and I'll take your advice because this is your realm, but like they could just do it from their phone. So like, how are you getting advisors and people to embrace that dynamic of making it organic?
Yeah, and that is the hardest part. So, back in the beginning when I was talking about my firm, right, I'm so big on that easy and authentic. And I know authentic is one of those words that can really kind of grate at people, but I've used that for a long time. And when I say that, I mean, I want to see the exact same person on a video that I would meet at a networking reception, or that I would meet for a coffee meeting. That's what I want to see. And so often, because video really in the history of humanity, right? Video has not been around for a long time. And even people that are great at, speaking on stage, that can do podcasts, that can do virtual meetings, when you're just hitting record, whether you're on the beach and it's your phone, you're at your office, and you are quite literally talking into a black hole, that is a totally, totally different skill set. And so getting comfortable is hands down the hardest process. It is not compliance. It is not technology. It's getting comfortable. And so my primary business is running 12-week workshops for advisors. Oh, nice. And we spend the first 6 weeks of that just building that comfort, because that's all that matters. You can have all the equipment, you can have all the compliance, you can have all the scripted everything, producers. If you're not comfortable, you are never going to like how that video looks and sounds. You're never going to want to put it out there. And so working on that and then doing it in, a small cohort where you are sharing it in a safe space, right? And then other people are like, oh my gosh, I love that. That was great. You're getting that feedback loop going. And then you start to go, oh, hey, maybe this isn't so bad. Let's try to put it out into the world. And then you're like, whoa, the world responded positively, right? So it is like any other skill. You're wearing a jersey, right? Sports. If you're learning to play basketball, you can't just try to shoot a 3-pointer once and be like, cool, I'm done for the day, right? You have to keep practicing over and over again.
I love that. And I knew you had the courses and programs like that, but I didn't know that that's how you structured it with the first 6 weeks, because it's so true. It's, with anything with writing, you're terrified to pass that off to somebody because you're like, oh gosh, they're going to hate it. It sounds terrible. Video is even scarier in my opinion, because if you're trying to do one of those, just a organic video and you're, stating your opinions or talking about something, you're putting it out there for people to opine on, and it's terrifying. But you're 100% right. You have to get those reps in. And the more reps you do it, like anything, the first time I met with a client when I was an advisor many years ago, I was terrified that they knew that this was my first client meeting. But after, multiple reps and multiple times presenting or anything like that, it gets more comfortable. And I think that's awesome, because even just hearing you explain how those first few weeks as they're getting comfortable with that, small cohort, it gave me a little anxiety. And we're here on a podcast. I've done interviews before, and it still is like, whew, she's going to prompt me with an idea and I would have to talk about that. I'm going to pass on that. I don't think that's for me. Because it sounds terrifying. But I think something that I always think about is there's always a tribe or a group that's out there. And that's one of the beauties of it, that as these advisors are trying to find their niche, because, you and I both know this from our past, that firms that have an early niche, that they'll grow faster in the beginning. And I think that when advisors, they might be a generalist and they're trying to find that group of people, that's a great way to do it. When you're putting out that content and you're putting out video, you're going to find real quick the people that love what you're saying and how you say it and what makes them feel comfortable. It's so powerful to me. So it makes me think so much about that's really a way that so many advisors I think are not embracing, because they really can lean in.
Well, I just want to touch on that real quick to say that, even if advisors in the beginning are like, oh, hey, I don't really know how I want to niche down. I love that that's exactly what you said, because that's why I'm like, be you, right? You have to put you out into the world, because who really wants to work with clients where they have to hide who they are, or they have to put that professional mask on, or they have to, that is exhausting. Right? So even if it's just a personality fit or your hobbies or interests or values or any of that stuff, if you put yourself out there, you're going to find those people that are going to be like, wow, she's great. When I started my financial planning business, I was 28 years old or something. You bet there were people that, saw me on video and were like, she's too young, or I don't want to work with her. Great. You didn't waste my time in a prospect call,
right.
And then other people built that relationship with me. And I heard time and again, people would tell me, hey, I've been following you for the last 6 months. And I finally got around, to booking a call with you. And my close rate was like 95% because they already knew me. They were already bought, sold, ready to go. It was just if I wanted to work with them.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you that a little bit more on that one before we get to like our final questions on it. Building that rapport and like giving clients like to be the ability to hear you, see you, like things like that. Have you seen that be like just almost like a gold mine of almost shortening the like sales funnel? Because so many advisors are trying to find different ways to find that group of people, grow their firm in all those different aspects. Have you seen a great return from advisors being able to close that time? Because you might not know that they've been watching you for 6 months, but they weren't even in your pipeline, but now they've just like went from starting the pipeline to like a week and now they want to onboard. Have you seen a big like growth from that?
Yeah, well, it's not only that, it's that the relationship just starts so much stronger, right? So let's say they're doing videos with their kids playing water polo in the background, right? Then on that first call, maybe they're bonding over, water polo or talking about the Olympics, or they see a baseball in your background and they talk about, that. So it's those little things that, again, they are already forming a relationship with you before you ever even know that they exist. And so, yeah, once you get on that prospect call, and like I said, they're just ready to go. So whether they've been watching you, for a week or a year, because it does take people a long time to finally actually make that decision. But once they've booked, you don't need to go through a long sales process. They're good to go.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like being able to hit the medium of video is so powerful, and getting to even like to see all that psychology of it. I even read a piece of research where it talked about the difference in, hearing something from like a speaker or video, or not like video, but like watching TV or hearing it from speakers versus having it like in your headphones, where anyone in the world now has some kind of headphones or earbuds in, like whatever it is, that them hearing it through that fast, like that, medium, it increases the level of trust like towards that, like your brain to their voice. And I'm like, whoa, so you're telling me like all these like random podcasts and to these people that I'm like watching on YouTube and I'm like walking through with my headphones on, I feel like I know them. Like there's a few people that I've like watched, their YouTube channel or something. I'm like, I feel like if I saw them in person, I could walk up and be like, hey, I know your whole story. But really they're like, buddy, I have no idea who you are. But I feel like there's so much power behind it, and I know the technology hasn't been around long, but there's just so much opportunity in every piece of your business. You're so true on that.
There is, and that is called a parasocial relationship.
There you go. See, I had a feeling you would know exactly what I'm talking about, but so anyone, we can drop that in the show notes so that people can look that up, because I think it's awesome. But before I have one final question. Is there anything final that you would want to add around advisor marketing or video marketing, or anything that you're like currently working on before we close up?
Yeah, I would always just encourage advisors, get a little group together. If it's people in a mastermind, if it's people in your office, just start practicing this, because my favorite part about doing this that I never saw coming is seeing the increase in confidence that advisors get as they get better and better at video and putting it out and getting those, really great comments back. And the more they share themselves and get those good responses, whether it's those one-to-one, video emails or putting something out on social or YouTube, getting that response and being like, oh, cool. Like, it's just such a fascinating validation, right? Not that you want to be a big YouTube star, but I think a lot of advisors, we're all human, right? So we all have imposter syndrome and, don't always have the right confidence. And maybe you're in a firm that is, trying to tamp you down a little bit. And so I just love that this really helps people embrace who they truly are, who they truly want to be, and where they want to go in life.
I love that. I love it. And the confidence piece, like self-efficacy, is something like I always think about with our industry. And I think that's just so huge. Like getting to see it makes me think like that Katie's out there probably like, I feel like a proud parent. Like, this person started, they were, all red and terrified and like shaking with the camera or something. And then now they're out there just fully riffing, having a whole conversation about Roth IRAs and why you should be doing this. So that makes me happy. I love hearing that. The final question I always end on is kind of reframing how we think about goals and things like that. And so what that question is what is the worst advice that you have received?
First thing that comes to mind is just anybody saying you should do anything. When I hear the word should, I just kind of shut down, and that person has lost all credibility, right? If people are like, oh, you should climb the corporate ladder, you should do this. I just think that's terrible, and I completely disagree with that. I don't think we should do anything.
And you mentioned earlier, do you feel like if it's something you actually want to do, you should be doing it? Like, well, I just said should there, but you will do it. You will actually do it.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying you should or I would like to, you're like, well, if it's important to you or it's a priority, kind of like the way you mentioned that you and your partner are, that you guys are like, look, we should do that. Like, that's 100% what we're going to do. It's not should or we're thinking about it. It's we are going to do that. Like, that's how we're very purposeful in that.
Yeah, why not? It's fascinating. Like, think about big life decisions. If you approach things with a why not, it's a lot harder to come up with reasons why not to do something, right? Because and again, from like a behavioral perspective, if you're like, why? You're like, you're instantly defensive. Why are you moving? Why are you taking that job? You're like, I don't know. Why, right? But if you're like, why not? You're like, why not? What's the worst that can happen?
You're 100% right. I'm a big fan of living purposefully, and I love seeing that is important, and it's like the core of your trajectory in your career. So I really appreciate you joining me, Katie, on Game Film today.
Jordan, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Game Film Podcast. Click the follow button to become notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.rfgadvisory.com. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It's not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Information here may be provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither our guests nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of our guests. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, its employees, or its clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of private client services. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private client services and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative has attained a particular level of skill or ability.